Welcome or welcome back. I'm Sydney and I've been traveling for 5 years, most of that being on the road in the US. I spent 2 years in a van, 2 years in a CRV, 9, 10 months in a backpack, hitching in other people's vans around the US, and also spending time in here in Colombia and Mexico, and then back in a vehicle, but only for a couple months towards the end. And now I'm living here in Colombia. In that time, I've learned so much from traveling, and today I wanted to share different ways to make money. Some of it being my experiences, and the rest of it being experiences from other people that I met on the road. I have 15 ways that you can make money on the road, as well as jobs where travel is part of the work. So I'm gonna start off first with some more practical jobs, ones that are more like 9 to 5s that you don't need to be on the road and you can actually be a house dweller and still travel. And then I'm gonna transition more into the jobs that work well for being on the road. And I'm gonna save some more of the different and odd jobs for the ends. But before I get into it, I wanna address some misconceptions first, because a lot of people seem to think that travel is only for rich people, and that is why I started my content to begin with, because I wanted to show people that you don't need to have money. And I get accused of having rich parents or being a trust fund kid all the time, but truthfully, I actually don't need a lot of the luxuries and conveniences that our modern society is used to. So it's really easy for me to let all of that go and choose my freedom and experience and travel rather than having all those things. So like my first year traveling, I spent $12,000 the entire year. That is technically below poverty level, and I had an amazing year. It was like one of my best years of my life. It's more so about how you budget and adapting to the lifestyle that you want to live. Like, you can't really have everything. You can't have the modern luxuries and your full freedom. It just doesn't really work that way unless you have money, unless you are a rich person. Then you could have that. That type of person totally exists on the road. There are definitely rich people, rich kids or whatever, trustafarians we like to call them, that are traveling around and don't have to worry about working or whatever because they have someone taking care of them. But that is not the reality for most of us. It is very normal for nomads to stop somewhere and work for a while to save up money and then move on to the next place. Just because it's not shared all the time on social media, that doesn't mean that's not what we're doing. Like most people, we are not recording our work and making videos out of it because it's boring and nobody wants to watch that. I think we should know by now that generally people post their highlights on social media. Before I started traveling, I worked for about, 6 to 8 months or something, saving up my money and my tips every week to be able to travel. I think I saved up about $8,000 by the time my lease was up, as well as getting my deposit back from my apartment. And that is how I started traveling. But there came a time, multiple times, that I had to stop and get a job and work for a bit. And that's okay, that's a part of the journey. And when you do that, you really get to stop in the area and get to know the place as a local, and you get to take things slow. And for me at least, that is a part of traveling. I like to see all the little things in between. That's why I prefer to actually drive or even backpack rather than flying everywhere, because it's more adventurous and you get to see all the little things in between that you would completely miss when you're flying over. So number one, we have airlines. I think most people already know that if you're a flight attendant, you get to travel that way. You get to get off at whatever city you're at, and then you come back. I'm not sure how many days they typically stay, if it's like a day or two. But if you just work for the airline in general, you still get benefits. So you could be the person loading and unloading the plane, like the checked bags, and you get to travel on the weekends. So you get free travel credits, and so do your friends and family. I think depending on the airline, I'm not sure if they all do that, but I know some do, where there's a benefits package. Again, depending on the airline, but I did know somebody that was a flight attendant and she retired and she still gets to travel for free. So with this one, obviously would be better if you're still living at home. And that brings me to the next one, which is Amtrak. It works kind of similar. I don't think you get as many benefits, but my uncle is a chef for Amtrak, so he cooks on the trains. He goes around the country and gets to stay there for like a day, I don't know, maybe two. So he goes to the major cities around the US that way. So that's another way that you could travel while you're living in a house. So tiny preface before I get into the next ones. There are certain professions that allow you to travel, but it is not across the board in these professions. Like, for example, number 3 is construction workers. Not all construction workers get to travel for work. but there are some, it depends on the company and what kind of position or role you play in the company. So like construction workers are one of the people that I've met the most that really surprised me, because I didn't know this, that travel for work. And the way it works is they might have a contract with a certain company or in another state or whatever, and they get put up for weeks or months, or like the most I've heard is a year, to finish up this contract. And the company pays for everything. Obviously, they pay their wages. I think they even get extra pay because of the travel. They pay for their hotel, they pay for their food, and sometimes they pay for their entertainment. And when I say it could be specific, I met this guy that had a contract with the hotel, and he would go to this hotel in like different cities, different states, and he was changing out their doors. He would spend weeks or even like a few months changing all the doors in these hotels because they were so big. And that's what he would do until the hotel was done. So it's very specific, and I'm not sure how that works with job listings, or if he's just been with the company for a while, or if that was his own company. I don't remember the details. But yeah, it could be as specific as that. Or you just happen to get in with the company that they get contracted out to different states, they work with bigger companies, whatever. But the downside to that I've heard from them is that they're paying for rent in a spot that they're not using for months at a time sometimes, and if they have a family or a wife or a girlfriend, they tend to miss them. And then some just get tired of traveling all the time, but obviously if you're watching this video, that probably would not be you. But yeah, moving on to the next one. Number 4 would be tech jobs. So kind of similar to what I just said with construction workers. Not necessarily all tech people are traveling, but I have met a ton of them that do, especially because they're going to conferences all the time. And again, depending on the company that they work for or the role that they're playing, they could get flown out to different cities, states, even countries, I've heard, and they could go to these meetings or conferences a lot. And again, their work is paying for everything, and they're more likely to get a little stipend for like entertainment and stuff from their company, as well as everything else being taken care of. Number 5 would be brand ambassadors. Again, it depends on the company. Some brand ambassadors only travel around their states or like their general region. It might be possible that they travel around the country. That might be a little less common, but some brand ambassadors are going around to restaurants, grocery stores, retail, warehouses. Some are even selling alcohol. Again, it just depends on the company and like the product that you're selling. But again, you're getting paid stipends to cover your food and stay. But now I'm gonna transition into jobs that work well for being on the road. Number 5, being a camp host. A camp host is somebody that stays at a campground and is the host of the campground. So they're doing the check-ins, dealing with reservations, whatever. And they get a free spot to stay, and sometimes they get paid. I think you could sense a pattern that it depends on the campground. There are a ton of campgrounds across the US. Some of them are just straight up work trades. So you're working a certain amount of hours, doing certain duties, and you get a free place to stay. Some of them will pay you by the week, for a month, by 3 months. I've seen like 3 months for $1,000 or a month for $500. It really depends, but it's a really good way, again, to get to know a certain area for a while, chill a little bit more, stack up some money, and not spend as much money because gas gets really expensive on the road. So this could be a really good option. And this kind of goes hand in hand with national parks. Now, I know that they have those kind of gigs too, like camp hosts and stuff, but there are other jobs you could do too working for national park. You could be like a ranger, you could be a tour guide. I heard that they have artist programs. I didn't do this myself. I've just talked to people that have done this. I know there's other jobs, but I can't give like too many details about it, unfortunately. But that's definitely a thing, and there are so many beautiful national parks around the country. It would be a beautiful way to get paid. Number 8, we have seasonal jobs and resorts. So this is something I did do. I lived in South Lake Tahoe for 4 months one winter. And for those that don't know, it is a mountain and ski resort town and is very popular in the area for snowboarding and skiing. So a bunch of tourists come in during peak season, and before peak season, they hire a bunch of workers. And it's not even just for the resorts. The whole town is hiring for the influx of tourists. So you don't need to be working in the mountain. I actually didn't. I worked for a restaurant at the bottom of the mountain and was a bar back. So you could be a bar back, bartender, server, host. You can even work at one of the retail stores. You don't have to be skiing or snowboarding or teaching people or being on the mountain. You could though, that's totally a popular thing that people do. They call them J1s. People come to the mountains to help out with the resort, and sometimes people end up staying. They typically give you a dorm. I think it's pretty cheap, and from what I've heard, it might be hostel kind of style or maybe just a dorm room like college. But you don't have to be in the snow for this. Like, this applies to any kind of resort or touristy area. So think of like even going to the beach. Like, if you know how to surf, you could teach surfing, or during the summer you could pick up like a restaurant job, retail job, whatever. And typically in these areas and during these seasons you make really good tips, so it could be a really good way to save up money in a short amount of time and have a good time, make friends. It's a great experience. Again, this is actually how I like to travel. I love to get to know the area, meet the locals, be more like a local, get to know the community, and you get to make great friends that way. Number 9, we have digital nomads. So this could be a job that you are able to travel around a lot more and be moving faster from place to place. But it depends on where you're at, because you need to have Wi-Fi, you need to have service, you need to have electricity to charge your laptop and your phone. It's a little bit more limiting in that way with how you could travel. Like, you can't go off grid, you can't be deep in many forests, and because it's a day job, you probably can't be chilling on the beach doing your work. So there are some drawbacks to it. You might not be able to do all the things that you want to because you're working during the day. You might miss a lot of sunlight, but the benefit to it is those jobs typically do pay a lot more. So if you're getting a higher pay and you're not paying rent, then you have more money to do a lot more. So you're able to do more extracurricular activities, have more money to spend, have more money to fix up your car, all of that. So like everything, it's a give and take. I actually haven't done that myself, so I don't even know the complete scope of like what digital nomad jobs are out there. But some that I've heard are like call centers, web designers, graphic designers. I include freelancing in there. I believe that's digital nomad dissy. Startups, crypto, whatever you could think of. I personally hate looking for jobs online, sending out a bunch of applications and not hearing anything back. So I have not done that myself, but I know it's a good and popular option. Now we're getting more into the entrepreneurial freelancing kind of stuff. For number 10, I have videographers and photographers. So if you do this or are already doing this, you're most likely already making your own hours, getting your own customers, like you already control your own life. So it is very easy to adapt to life on the road. And it might even be easier to find customers because, one, you're already likely in a lot of beautiful spots, and when you're traveling, you are networking a lot. So you could be in a really small town where there's no really good videographers or photographers, or there's just no one that has your quality, no one with your style, and there's not a lot of competition. And like, it tends to be a thing, like when you're new in a small town, especially like say you're in the middle of the country, you're like exotic, you're like a shiny new thing, you're the new person, people are drawn to you, and it gives you that edge for selling yourself. So you could likely easily pick up new customers when you're traveling across the country. It's also a thing where you could stop, say, in a big city for a month and go around to businesses or something and see who needs content done, or post on local groups and see who needs photo shoots. Really, however you get your customers now, you could easily do that in another city. So number 11, we have artists, and that could encompass painters, jewelry makers, muralists, tattoo artists, like whatever kind of artist you are. There are so many ways that you could set up a booth or a tent or whatever and sell your art or find clients. You could go to festivals, you could go to street fairs, farmers markets, touristy spots, so say like at a beach or say somewhere like Sedona, or even in like big cities, sell your art on the street. And yes, I have definitely seen tattoo artists do that, set up at all of the places that I have listed, even tattooing out of their van. Or you could be a guest artist in a tattoo shop. You could go on Instagram or even Google Maps and call around to the local tattoo shops and see who has open spots or who might have a guest opening. I would let you rent a spot for a week or a couple weeks, whatever. Number 12, we have the Renaissance Fair. So I have met a bunch of Ren kids at gatherings that travel around the country following the Ren Fair, work on the weekends, and it sounds like such a fun way to work and travel. And they typically travel around in groups too. So not only is it a good way to make money and have fun, but to make good road friends as well. It seems like such a great experience, and it's something that I definitely want to try in the future. Number 13, kind of similar, would be festival event staff. So not all roles or all festivals will pay you to travel, but there are some companies that work for the festivals that travel to different festivals, and you could travel with them. So I worked at Coachella once in security, and the team that I worked with offered me at the end to travel with them to go to different festivals to be their security and event staff. And I don't know why I didn't take the opportunity. I was 18 at the time. I think I was scared or something. My life was very hectic and unknown, so I didn't end up taking this opportunity, but it definitely sounds like a fun one. So I would suggest, if you do have this opportunity, definitely go for it. Number 14, we have odd jobs. So for those of you that don't know what an odd job is, an odd job is kind of what it sounds like. It's a non-traditional job, not a 9 to 5 at all. It's just, it could be a one-time thing. It could be like a handful of days that you work. It really depends. Typically people find them on like Craigslist, Facebook, talking to somebody, and they're like, hey, I have a job, do you want to work for a week or something? So I've actually heard people picking up construction jobs this way. It could be helping people move. It could be being a model for a studio and having people paint you, all kinds of stuff. It's not consistent work, but it is a way to get by, and it is something that a lot of travelers do. And number 15, so this kind of goes a bit with the odd job, but it is so specific to people that I've met and is not a super common thing. And I wanted to include this to give people inspiration and to show people that they could just be creative and find a way to travel, because honestly there's so many more different ways that you could travel or find a job that allows you or will pay you to travel. It is not just these 15. I just wanted to create this list specifically to help people that are asking and really have no idea. But as a nomadic person, if you want to travel, you will find a way. But anyways, number 15 will be these random jobs that I have heard from people that I've met. One guy who was a special delivery driver for pets. So I don't know exactly how he got into the job, but somehow he started delivering pets across the country or to different states. So for whatever reason, it could be moving, flying, whatever, people would be across the country and they needed to take their pets with them, but they didn't have a way or they couldn't go and get them. So he would bring their pet to them and drive across the country. And he ended up making a whole business out of it because he would advertise and then people would start recommending him, and it became like a whole gig for him. And when he was in those new areas, he would explore. He got some time off because he was making his own hours. He'd be waiting for the next gig, or on his way back home, he would make stops along the way. I heard some people doing pretty much the exact same thing with cars, either delivering cars or selling them. So there's certain cars that are more preferred on the West Coast and the East Coast. So I knew this guy that would be on the West Coast and get vans and would take them to the East Coast because they wouldn't be rusty. So the people on the East Coast would pay more for these vans, and then he would buy, I don't know, it was some specialty kind of car, I don't remember what it was, and he would take them over to the West Coast and people would pay a lot of money for those. So he made a lot of money in doing that, and of course got to travel. He got to take his time, make stops and everything. I met a band manager in New Mexico when he was on tour. I recently met a guy that was on tour for his film screening for a film that he directed. I've met models. But yeah, honestly, I feel like I could go on. So we're just gonna stop there. If you've done any jobs that I didn't include in this list, comment it to give inspiration to those that are looking for a way to travel and make money. And if you guys have any more travel tips or advice, stories, comment that below as well and I'll make a video out of it. I hope this helped you guys, and if it did, please consider supporting this channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing this with people that might find it helpful as well. As always, thank you guys, and I'm working on a vlog right now, so that will likely be my next video, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys next time.